Hey, this is Josh with Growlink, and in today's walkthrough we'll be going over how to make an autofill sensor trigger to fill up a batch tank within Portal 2.0. You'll start by logging into Portal 2.0 and accessing the controller that you want to make this rule on. For most commercial customers, this would be on your central feed system. Once you're at the dashboard for that controller, you're going to tap the rules section up at the top of the web page. Once you're in the rules section, you're going to select the rule folder and rule group that you wish to make this rule in. In this particular example, we're just going to choose the default rule group and the default rule folder. Since we want to fill a tank using sensor data, we're going to choose the Sensor Triggers tab, followed by clicking the Add Sensor Trigger button. In the pop-up that follows, you're going to input a display name so that you know how to identify this particular rule. In this case, we're going to just choose the name of example, Batch Tank A Autofill. Next, we want to choose the time of day at which this autofill rule will be active. In this particular case, we could choose all day, day only, night only, or custom time. For this example, we're just going to choose all day. Next, we want to choose what sensor we want to look at to determine when we need to fill this tank. In most cases, batch tanks have their own tank level sensors, so we want to point that towards the batch tank level sensor for this tank. Next, we want to choose what device we want to open based on the level of the tank. This would typically be the fill valve for a batch tank, so we're going to select the batch tank A fill valve in this case. Next, we're going to choose whether or not this set point is dynamic or static. In this particular case, static is the only acceptable choice, as there's no set point drawer for filling tanks. Next, we want to choose the value at which we want to evaluate where the tank is going to fill and specify a deadband around that value. In this case, we're going to choose a value of 50%. Next, we want to choose a deadband around this value that we want the fill valve to activate and then shut off. In this example, if we set a deadband of 30% and set the activation point to below, we'll see that the batch tank fill valve will turn on when the batch tank level for tank A falls beneath 20% and will be switched off when it hits 80% after filling. The last piece to specify is the dosing recipe that you want to fill this tank with. If you're a commercial customer and have a Growlink fertigation skid, you can choose a number of dosing recipes that are user configured to ensure that your batch tank fills with the desired recipe. If you set the dosing recipe to none, the tank will fill with pure water. In this particular case, we're going to have it fill with the batch tank A recipe. With all these values put in place, all that's left is to add this sensor trigger by hitting the Add Trigger button at the bottom left, followed by hitting the Update Controller button in the top right of the web page. Once the configuration update that gets pushed from tapping the Update Controller button goes through, this rule will now be active on the controller and will attempt to keep the tank full if it ever falls beneath 20%, and also shut off the fill valve if the tank level ever goes above 80% as part of those fills. This concludes how you would make a sensor trigger autofill to fill a batch tank within Portal 2.0.